Hello everybody, welcome to my first spoiler video for Kaldheim. It's a set that's coming out in February of 2021, and we get our first look at a new Praetor. This is the first time since New Phyrexia that we're getting any of these Praetors back. We get a new Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. This time instead of a whopping 8 mana, however, he's only 6. Trample and Haste, which is already pretty good for green. I mean, you get the power and toughness for the mana, and you get some pretty good keywords. If you would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. This means if you have any kind of -1/-1 strategy where you put those kinds of counters on your opponent's creatures, you're going to get twice as many. But I think everybody knows what you're going to want to do with this, and that's poison counters. You're going to want to use Infect on your opponents just because it makes it twice as fast. If an opponent would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put half that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. So this is very similar to Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. It has a similar pattern, but it's not the same ability, where you double whatever you do to your opponents, and whatever your opponents do to you is halved. So it's a very cool ability. Is this as powerful as the old Vorinclex? Well, we can look at that right now because it's in the Thesaurus. My answer would be no. The original Vorinclex was just so powerful. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Compared to the counters mechanic, this is something that can apply to every deck and instantly benefits you. Like if you're playing green, oh no, it's a Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. I'm sure there's no way I could benefit from playing this. Whereas you will need some kind of counter strategy to really take advantage of the previous Vorinclex, the new one. And just looking at Kaldheim cards, we're getting some pretty cool stuff here. So even if we don't get the kind of powerful Praetors that we got before in New Phyrexia, we're still going to get some pretty cool cards here in Kaldheim. Tusky, Bearer of Secrets. This spell can't be countered. This was Christmas Eve. By the way, happy holidays to everyone. Indestructible Tusky, Bearer of Secrets attacks each combat if able. And whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. This is great. I mean, not a lot of power and toughness, but as a commander option for squirrels. I mean, it doesn't even really look like a squirrel, but that's still pretty cool. Indestructible, attacks each combat if able. A lot of things in green where you can pump it up with power and toughness. So definitely one I think people are going to have some fun with. You can finally make Squirrel Tribal legally in Commander. We get Blessing of Frost, so this is a snow sorcery. This may be the first time since Cold Snap that we have like snow being part of an actual expansion set. You know, we had some in Modern Horizons, but those aren't standard legal. So Blessing of Frost, 4 mana green sorcery, you distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of creatures you control, where X is the amount of snow mana spent to cast the spell. Then draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So it's another get more power and toughness, draw more cards. A lot of sorceries like this in green. This one just happens to be snow specific, so it may be more useful later on, once we get a better idea of exactly what the snow mechanic is in the set. Battle for Bredegard is a cool little saga. The first 2 lore counters don't really do that much. You just get either a 1/1 white human warrior creature token or a 1/1 elf warrior. The third lore counter is really the best because you choose any number of artifact tokens and or creature tokens you control with different names, and for each of them you create a token that's a copy of it. So you get some really cool token synergies. I think that ability is just strong. We get Arnie Brokenbrow, 3 mana legendary human berserker in red. 3/3 haste. It has a boast ability for 1. You may change Arnie Brokenbrow's base power to 1 plus the greatest power among other creatures you control until end of turn. Activate this ability only if the creature attacked this turn and only once each turn. If you're asking me, not really an ability that I'm super interested in. It's just more power and toughness on a commander. Now these 2 are pretty cool, and this is going back a bit. We're talking over a week ago. I've been kind of bad with keeping up with the new cards from Kaldheim, but we have some pretty cool ones here. With Rannar the Ever Watchful and Lathril, Blade of the Elves. Rannar is just insane. Probably the card I'm looking to play the most for Commander. 4 mana, white, blue, 2/3 legendary spirit warrior with flying and vigilance. The first card you foretell each turn costs 0 to foretell. Now I don't know what foretell is, but it probably has something to do with exiling, because that's a lot of what this commander is. Whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So if you love a lot of those blink cards like Eerie Interlude, if you like Brago, you can blink a lot of things, which will end up giving you a bunch of 1/1 white spirit creature tokens. So imagine, I think we all know how powerful those decks already are. You just gift yourself even more tokens, more power and toughness. It's going to make that strategy even stronger. And we have Lathril, who is a 4 mana in black and green, 2/3 legendary elf noble. Really sweet looking commander here. You got the feeling that after Commander Legends, black-green elves was going to be a priority, and we see that here. Now these are what I imagine are going to be the commander deck commanders, kind of like with Anawan. Menace, and whenever Lathril, Blade of the Elves, deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. So kind of like Tana the Bloodsower, that whole ability where you deal combat damage, you get more tokens. It has a pretty cool ability, although I don't think this is practical. You can tap her and tap 10 untapped elves you control, so 11 in total. Each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life. I like that ability. I like how it can affect all of your opponents. I don't like the cost to do it. I know elves are often about getting a lot of little mana dorks out there. You could have a ton of elves out on the field, but this is so demanding. I think if you cut it down to 5 life, it would be more reasonable, and maybe 5 elves. 5 elves for 5 life is a lot more fair, I think. It would be easier to use that ability. I really doubt that it's even going to come up that often. I know her first ability helps you get more elves, but still that's going to be a lot harder to do than I think some people believe. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for some of the spoilers I caught up on. There are obviously some other ones, but it's been well over a week. Hope you all enjoy the rest of 2020. And if you don't, at least we have 2021 coming up here. Void here signing off. See you all next time.